Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm doing a reaction to Patanjali, Eightfold Paths of Samadhi, the Psychology of Samadhi number 2. So we did the first one. I think there's 4 parts to this. Let's go ahead and do the second one. Okay. Samadhi. I'm pausing already. But I do have a quick question though. I know Sadhguru said he's done it before. Has anyone ever did a video on, I guess, the brain activity of someone who's meditating? Like, I'm just kind of curious as to what his brain activity is, before getting to meditation, like he's talking to the doctors or whatever, and then all of a sudden, measuring his brain activity and whatnot. Then all of a sudden, they get into maybe samadhi or at least meditating, just to see if there's a difference. Now, I know Sadhguru said that, they thought he was dead because of no brain activity, but I'm just wondering if anyone's recorded. I just want to see, and I want to know what doctors' reactions are. And if it's in Hindi, please set there be subtitles, because I want to know. I'm just curious, it's good to be curious in the world. It makes life exciting. That's a fancy setup.
In his famous Yoga Sutras, the great rishi Patanjali defines the fundamental practice of yoga as chitta vritti nirodha, the complete restraint of all vrittis, all activities of your mind. He also prescribes a system of 8 angas, or steps, through which you can restrain those vrittis and reach the state of samadhi, the ultimate goal of yogic meditation. To make his ancient teachings more accessible, we'll discuss each of those 8 angas from a modern psychological perspective, and draw upon important insights from my personal practice. But first, it's important to identify the particular kinds of mental activities that you have to restrain. Most introductory psychology books divide those activities into 3 broad categories: thoughts, emotions, and sensations. When you're not meditating, your mind usually produces a continual flow of ever-changing thoughts. Thoughts that arise, evolve, and fade away rather quickly. Your mind also produces emotions. Those emotions generally change less rapidly than thoughts. Some emotions can linger for days. We call them moods.
Okay.
In addition to your thoughts and emotions, your mind also produces sensations. Everything you see, hear, taste, smell, and touch. Even though sensations come from the world around you, you experience them only when they arise in your mind. Let me explain. As you watch this video, your eyes and ears capture an image of me and the sound of my voice. Then, all that information is conveyed to your brain. Because of the extraordinary complexity and power of your brain, an image of me and the sound of my voice is generated in your mind. Now, in addition to thoughts, emotions, and sensations, there's a 4th kind of vritti, a unique mental activity that's of great importance to spiritual practitioners. It's your ego. Not ego as pride or arrogance, but rather as the sense of I-ness, your feeling of being an individual person. Psychologists call it reflective awareness or self-consciousness. In Sanskrit, it's called ahankara, literally the I maker, or the I thought.
So interestingly, he said the self-awareness. I remember watching some videos on YouTube about they were looking at children as to when children become self-aware. And the basic test they did was just looking in the mirror. If they can recognize that they're seeing themselves in the mirror. It's really kind of weird, when you hear Advaita Vedanta, you're not seeing yourself, you're seeing this meat suit. But get the idea, he's like, oh, that is me, that's mine, I guess, but me. And another test they did was also in the jungles to see if any other animal was aware of itself. I can't remember. I think they may have found, apes and maybe elephants, I think. Not necessarily all of them, but there were some. I think those are the two animals that may have recognized themselves in the mirror. All the other animals didn't. They saw it as like a different animal, I think. Again, very interesting video, and the eye maker. I get the translation. It's not saying that they makes eyes, but it's the thing that makes you say, creates the I in the sentence that you make. I am this. I am doing that. I am going over there. The I maker.
This I thought is a vritti produced by your mind, just like thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Your ego doesn't come and go quite like your thoughts, emotions, and sensations do, so its presence in your mind is more subtle and difficult to distinguish. But you can easily recognize it like this. Suppose you listen to your favorite music and get so deeply absorbed in a powerful experience that you feel yourself getting lost in the music. When you get lost in the music, who is it that actually gets lost? Not you, because you can still hear the music and enjoy it. So, what gets lost in the music is actually your ego, the ahankara, your sense of individuality. That particular vritti vanishes from your mind whenever you get completely absorbed in a powerful experience. So, just like your mind produces thoughts, emotions, and sensations, it produces your ego as well. To understand this better, you can watch my video called An Intimate Encounter with Your Ego. You'll find a link below.
Might have to look at that. Your ego gets lost. I'm trying to think about that, because when you get so lost into something, at least for me, I don't remember it. I think maybe it's because I get lost in my thoughts more so than the music or something. So when I get lost into things, it's usually because I'm so deep in my thoughts that everything else around me just, I won't say vanishes, but it's just a kind of like a blur. And the only thing I'm really focused on is my thoughts, whatever that may be. So is that what he's saying, that your ego disappears? So just like your mind, nope, not particular. So when you get lost in the music, it's actually your ego, your sense of individuality. Victory vanishes from your mind whenever you get completely absorbed in a powerful experience. That particular victory vanishes from your mind whenever you get completely absorbed in a powerful experience. So just like your mind produces thoughts, emotions, sensation, it produces the experience. So just like your mind produces, it produces your ego as well. To understand it better, I guess I need to, did I not watch that? I may have to find that one actually. Don't remember. the logical brain and emotional brain? Cogs, wheels, and chaos.
According to Patanjali, to attain samadhi, you have to restrain all 4 kinds of vrittis produced by your mind: thoughts, emotions, sensations, and ego. To enable you to do this, he prescribes a powerful sequence of practices in his 8 angas, or limbs of yoga. These 8 angas are a series of steps, like rungs on a ladder or limbs on a tree. Those steps lead from introductory practices all the way to the ultimate goal of samadhi. The 8 angas, as you may already know, are yama, prohibitions; niyama, injunctions; asana, postures; pranayama, breath control; pratyahara, sense withdrawal; dharana, concentration; dhyana, meditation; and samadhi, absorption. We'll discuss how each of these are to be practiced. First, yama and niyama. Before beginning an intricate and demanding practice like yogic meditation, you have to be ready, completely prepared. For instance, in my 20s, I approached a famous music teacher for lessons on playing the classical guitar. He told me to go home and practice a series of complicated scales for 6 months before coming back for any lessons. Only after practicing those scales could I fully benefit from his lessons. And in a similar way, only after the practice of yama and niyama will your meditations be fully effective. Yama is a set of 5 prohibitions prescribed by Patanjali. Ahimsa prohibits harming living beings. Satya prohibits lying. Asteya prohibits stealing. Brahmacharya prohibits immoral sexual activities. And aparigraha prohibits possessiveness. Practicing these 5 yamas is meant to help you establish a dharmic lifestyle that's conducive to meditation. As a young man, I had to change my lifestyle when I found that eating meat and drinking alcohol badly affected my daily meditations. Not surprisingly, eating animals and drinking harmful liquids is prohibited by the very first yama, ahimsa. Here's another reason for adopting a conducive lifestyle. Suppose you sit down to meditate just after having a huge argument with someone. When you try to meditate, that argument will almost certainly push its way into your mind again and again, ruining your practice. Any kind of strife or conflict in life can cause distractions to arise during meditation. For this reason, a life that's relatively free from conflict is necessary. It's easy to see why ancient practitioners often isolated themselves in mountain caves and remote huts. Since you probably can't do that, practicing the 5 yamas will help you avoid much of the typical strife of day-to-day life. In addition to the 5 yamas, Patanjali also prescribes 5 niyamas, 5 injunctions. To become fully prepared for yogic meditation, your mind should not only be free from conflict, but also it should be calm, disciplined, and emotionally mature. Practicing the 5 niyamas is meant to help you cultivate these important qualities. The first niyama is shaucha, purity, having a pure mind, a mind that's free from anger, hurt, envy, resentment, and so on. Emotions like these are huge obstacles because they can hijack your mind, so to speak, when you try to meditate. To simply assume that your spiritual practice will automatically free you from all emotional impurities is a common but serious mistake. This mistake is often called spiritual bypassing because it leads you to bypass or avoid resolving problems in your life, problems that give rise to emotions like anger, hurt, and resentment. Years ago, I was sometimes guilty of this mistake, spiritual bypassing. One day, when I was living in my guru's ashram, I had a big argument with a fellow student. Afterwards, I felt hurt, angry, ashamed of my behavior, and deeply disappointed in myself. I was desperate to escape all those painful emotions, so I sat down in my room to meditate. I had learned how to use certain techniques to push away all kinds of painful emotions. But because I was so upset at that time, I really struggled to push them away. Finally, after 2.5 hours of intense practice, the violent storm raging in my mind and heart finally settled down. I felt good, even a bit smug about being able to free myself from all those painful feelings. Later in the day, I came across a student I had argued with, and in just a moment, all those emotions came flooding back. My efforts in 2.5 hours of meditation went down the drain, so to speak. The purpose of this anecdote is to show that spiritual bypassing simply doesn't work.
I wonder, makes me wonder if that's what I'm doing. I don't think so, because I go with understanding. That's my biggest thing, is if I understand why I'm upset at something, then I can do something about it. And if I choose not to do something about it, then I don't worry about it. Because it'd be stupid of me to worry about something that I can do something about and not do anything about it. So by acknowledging the fact that there's something, I do understand, but I choose not to do anything about it, then I know not to be upset at it. It's kind of weird. I'm not saying it works for everything, but it's worked for the most part for me. So understanding is a very big thing for me. Understanding why things happen. I'm not going to sit there and say that I understand everything, but when I can understand it, and it's an issue, I usually am able to handle it. Again, whether I do something about it or not, I usually am able to. It doesn't affect me because I understand it, and I choose to do something or choose not to do something. It doesn't always work, but it's worked for the most part for me. I'm trying to think, has it always worked? I don't know. Probably not. It's worked more times than not, though. It's probably at like an 80% efficiency. 80% success rate, maybe higher, but it's not perfect.
Emotional problems require emotional solutions, not spiritual solutions. Emotional problems have to be addressed and resolved in a mature, pragmatic manner. That's how emotional maturity is cultivated, and emotional maturity is essential for spiritual growth. Returning to the 5 niyamas, the second is santosha, patience or forbearance. This virtue can help you gracefully accept difficulties and discomforts that can't be avoided without getting irritated and distracted from your practice. Next is tapas, religious disciplines like fasting, waking up early to meditate, and living simply without unnecessary luxuries. Such disciplines help you remain firmly focused on your spiritual practice. The next niyama is swadhyaya, regular spiritual study. Today, many resources are freely available online, which can be a great help as long as you're highly selective about what you choose. The final niyama is Ishvara Pranidhana, devotion to Ishvara, God. Any kind of prayer or worship connects you emotionally to a reality that's infinitely greater than yourself. That connection can help you feel more secure and remain calm, even in the midst of difficult situations. These yamas and niyamas are meant to be practiced not just before you begin meditating, but throughout your life.
I'll say this. So far, was it the first one? Where is that at? Non-injury. Obviously, I don't think you should necessarily hurt living things. Obviously, to me, obviously, you should be able to defend yourself. Hopefully, you can smack it and scare it away, because if you don't, it's going to keep attacking you. Now, eating animals, my stance on that is that as long as you don't let it suffer, we are part of this world. And so I have no necessarily issues with that. So I guess this is going to be a problem with me. Truthfulness, not an issue. Stealing, not an issue. Continence, not an issue. Non-grasping. What's non-grasping? Greedy, that's right, greedy. Yeah, non-issues for all of them except for the first part. Well, obviously, I'm not gonna I'll try to avoid harming living beings, of course, including non-living beings, because I got to take care of it. If I harm it, it's gonna damage it, and it might not last long or might break it. So that includes non-living things for my part. And of course, I would say, now again, can you self-defense if it attacks you? I'm assuming so. I'm assuming you can harm the animal if it's harming you. Self-defense. But of course, the eating portion is going to be the kind of the tough part. Obviously, I do want to because it's not so easy to find necessarily. I can't go veg. I don't think I could. I don't think I could go fully vegetarian. Meaning that I could eat vegetables for like a couple of months straight, but eventually I'm going to eat meat, not just because I'm probably eventually going to crave it, or maybe it's going to eventually come to a point where the food that I order from or whatever is going to have meat in it. I think maybe trying to focus too much on your diet on I don't know veganism is what it's trying to point out there. Hopefully not, because that gets pretentious with some people, of course. Not everyone. Not everyone that's a vegan is freaking just dumb. But anyways, where I was going with that? I can't go full vegetarian. I don't think he's talking about veganism, because veganism even says that you cannot use anything that's an animal product. If honey is an example of one, milk is another example of one. So fish, obviously. So, and also, if an animal tills the land, whatever food produced from that, I think, is also not vegan, because you're exploiting animals. Is the whole point. Or not even exploiting, maybe. I guess it is technically exploiting, even if you feed the animal, take care of the animal, because the animal didn't consent to it. I think it goes that far too sometimes. So 1, 2, 3, 4 of it is perfectly fine. That meat, that non-injury, with technicalities in that issue. Again, I'm not. Yeah. Let's just leave it at that. I can't keep talking. So this next one, purity and thoughts, I believe, right? Patience. Oh yeah, I wait for sales all the time, so I'm decently patient. Disciplined, maybe. Study. I think purity, patience, discipline, and study is for the most part, good for me, but devotion, in terms of if you have to do it with a god, that's going to be a problem. Now, if you talk about devotion to the human race, not too much of a problem. That doesn't mean I get taken advantage of. That means I'm kind to people. And if people are God, well, technically, then my devotion to God is the people, and therefore, study. Yeah, I'm not studying anything religious. Discipline. I'm fairly disciplined, kinda. Patient. I'm decently patient. Purity. I think in terms of thoughts, I can't remember, but mostly, I'm not sitting there trying to think of evil thoughts or anything like that. So this one is mostly good, except for the devotion part, perhaps, depending.
For example, after returning to that famous music teacher, after practicing scales for 6 months, in my very first lesson, he told me to continue practicing those scales every single day. Yama and niyama are also to be practiced every day. Here, you can see that the conventional comparison of the 8 angas to rungs on a ladder or branches on a tree is not completely correct. When you climbed the next rung or branch, you leave the lower one behind. But Patanjali intended that you gradually include one anga after another to develop and expand your ongoing practice. The third of Patanjali's 8 angas is asana, posture. He defines it in a single sutra, Sthira Sukham Asanam. Your posture for seated meditation should be sthira, firm or stable, and sukha, comfortable, pain-free. That means you can sit on the floor or in a chair, with or without a cushion and back support, as long as your back is erect, your head, neck, and shoulders are properly aligned, and you're comfortable. Most people find it uncomfortable to sit in Padmasana, the lotus pose, with each foot resting on the opposite thigh.
Oh, yeah.
So then, why is Padmasana practiced at all? And how did the elaborate system of asanas practiced in yoga studios today come about, since Patanjali never mentioned them? Well, advanced meditators need to remain seated comfortably for hours at a time, without being distracted by pain or needing to shift their limbs.
Ooh.
The various standing, seated, and inverted asanas practiced today were devised to help make your body sufficiently limber and flexible so that you too can sit in meditation for hours without feeling stiff or uncomfortable. An important aspect of asana that's often neglected is not how you sit, but where you sit. Patanjali doesn't discuss this at all, but many other texts do, including the Bhagavad Gita. Most of those texts recommend sitting in a remote place where you're not likely to be distracted by the activities of people nearby. When the weather allows, I love to meditate outdoors in a beautiful and secluded natural setting. But I usually meditate in my room, which is not entirely free from distracting noises. Sometimes I use these noise-canceling headphones. The expensive ones work surprisingly well. An inexpensive alternative is to simply use foam earplugs.
Oh man, it's kind of funny though. You start these ancient techniques, and then you have a modern day noise canceling headphones. Now, I thought of that first. Then the next thing I thought about is, could you imagine going to the Himalayas with a whole bunch of monks with those noise canceling headphones? Oh, that's gonna be so weird but funny at the same time because you would never expect that. I mean, it would be just a it's funny because it's a mix of ancient culture with modern technology. You would never think that those two would go together, but that's pretty much actually whenever actually yeah whenever he said that, and it reminds me because I do have some noise canceling headphones. I bought them because I thought I'd be going over to Japan and for the long airplane trip, and they're active noise canceling headphones. So um, sometimes it's just nice to wear it with the noise canceling on, and it kind of mellows out the noise. You can still hear, but it's pretty nice. Sometimes it can be calming. Hmm. I wonder if that will help with meditation for me. I know it was calming at the time because I was just sometimes I just put it on. I mean, usually I'm listening to something, but then whenever the thing stops, I just have it on, so I just leave it on, and I just remember it being kind of comfortable. But I do this at work, um, and then, but of course I can't keep it on because I have to hear the phone rings, and yeah. I wonder if that would work. I wonder if that would help. Actually, never thought about that, and he just brought it up here. Interestingly enough.
The fourth of Patanjali's 8 angas is pranayama, breath control. In India long ago, very little was known about human physiology and anatomy because the dissection of cadavers was not performed. Instead, the ancient rishis used their powers of observation and intuition to learn about the human body. They created a model of the body's nervous system, describing it as having 3 main nerves, or nadis, running along the length of the spine and connecting to a vast network of 72,000 other nerves that radiate outwards throughout the body. Today, we know that their model is not anatomically correct. Yet, it helped them understand something very important about what we now call the sympathetic nervous system. Whenever you're frightened or threatened by something, your body's sympathetic nervous system triggers the so-called fight or flight response, which floods your bloodstream with adrenaline, cortisol, and other hormones that stimulate your body and mind to prepare you for action. The rishis discovered that by breathing very slowly and deeply, the sympathetic nervous system is calmed, and the fight or flight response is reduced, which results in physical and mental relaxation.
I'd say that's genuinely, honestly, that is something that we all should be able to do. Should be able to do. And this is something that Sadhguru talks about, how people who generally works out in the field can tell when a rain's coming because they can smell it in the air. I can kinda smell it, but it's usually like a few minutes, or maybe it's just because it just rained. You can smell the rain, but because if it rains somewhere else, I think some of that smell can get transported, and you can say, "Yep, it rains somewhere else, and it might be coming here," and you can feel that it's coming there because generally the wind will come towards you. I think in modern times we're just so distracted with a whole bunch of other things that we just don't pay attention, and and this is genuinely truly amazing. And this is I will say this: I pay attention to my body. I try to as much as possible, and I try to be, well, I try to pay attention to everything. If I go number 2, if I go number 1, if I go number 3, maybe even number 4, possibly 5. But you get what I'm saying. The different things that you do, you should pay attention to. It's very important. It could mean something. If something seems a little bit off, you know, you may want to go see a doctor. And I do try to pay attention to that. And this is the interesting thing. I remember my first time getting COVID, and I'm very familiar with my body being sick. But the time that I got COVID, when I try to smell, I could smell the iron in my blood. I'm like, this is different. I might have COVID. And I went to go get tested, and in fact I did COVID. That's the first time I ever got COVID, just because my sickness was different, and I could smell the iron in my blood somehow. I don't know how. I could smell it. It's really weird. And then the next few times I got COVID, I think it's the second time I got COVID, I could barely smell it. I don't know whether my body's just getting used to it. I don't know whether my body was fighting it off better. But the next time I got it, I could kind of smell it. It was kind of a question, but I did get it again. And but I haven't caught it since. So I don't know. Like, it's just really weird. Like, again, I pay attention to whenever I get sick, how I get sick, what I feel when I get sick, and just anything else I can notice about getting sick. And then whenever after the sickness, I was like, okay, that was that kind of sickness, you know, fever, runny nose, you know, typical sickness. Sometimes when I get home, I'm so tired and I get a headache. I was like, okay, I'm about to get sick. But when I wake up in the morning, I feel fine. And I guess my body may have fought it off, I'm not sure. But I usually know if I'm about to get sick. I think most people do, because you start feeling like, you know, bad. Anyways, let's continue.
They devised certain pranayama techniques that are extremely effective for calming your mind and preparing you for meditation. Information about those techniques is widely available. In my own practice, I often use a modified Ujjayi pranayama technique that's described in my online course in meditation. You'll find a link below.
I'll highly suggest if there's anyone's fairly new, especially in the United States, to watch this person, just because I think he does an amazing job at explaining things in a way that I think a Westerner, or at least an American, would understand. He does a fantastic job at that. Same with Swami Sarvapriyananda. I think he's a little bit, I think he talks a little bit in a high level, as in he doesn't quite break it down too much, not as much as he does. But still, obviously he lives in America and he knows how to break it down as well. But I think he still has a lot more, how do I say, I think he still explains things in a little bit of a higher level, as in that he doesn't break it down far enough sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And then Sadhguru, been around the world, he has many ways of explaining things, and his explanation is stories.
Now, look at this chart.
Whoa.
It shows how the practice of yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama prepare you for samadhi by gradually restraining your vrittis, the activities of your mind. Emotions are restrained through the practice of yama and niyama, which helps free you from conflicts and gain emotional maturity. Sensations are restrained through asana, sitting comfortably in a quiet place. But restraining thoughts is much more difficult and can be achieved only with further steps of practice.
Interesting. Thoughts to me is not necessary. I mean, my emotions, not so much. Sensations is where my biggest struggle is. Because I remember one time I just laid in my bed. And thoughts was a little struggle, emotions not an issue. Thoughts a little bit, but sensation was the biggest one for me, interestingly enough. Thoughts, because again, like I go by understanding, and I realized that my brain just goes random. Oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to do that too loud. It just goes random sometimes, and because I understand that, I'm not necessarily bothered by it. Obviously, I still need to control it because it does sometimes bypass my, I won't say blockade, but sometimes it screams a little bit louder and it gets my attention. Like, oh, you said something? No, okay, okay. Just thoughts flying by, and all of a sudden one of them just jumps out. I was like, oh, gotcha. No, okay. But yeah, sensation for me is the most part, because my body just does weird things. I can feel the hairs untangling. I can feel things in my gut growling and moving, and it just is those things like you see that, like, sorry, streams of thoughts just flowing by like this, right? All of a sudden, hair to go, woo! It's like, oh, I gotcha. Yeah, where'd you go? It's like, so thoughts, not so much. It's the sensation. I guess I need to look at that one. Honestly, question for you guys. For you, I guess this is for, I believe, meditation. So, what is your most difficult one? Now, ego. I'm not sure about ego, honestly. I'm trying to think. Sensations. So emotion, I think I mostly got that. Thoughts, mostly, but it still gets me. Sensations gets me most of the time. That's where I'm struggling. Ego, I'm not too sure, because obviously people who are not, I guess, well versed in this can't separate the ego from themselves, and maybe I'm still stuck with that. Well, not really, but at the same time, probably. I understand there's a different me versus a different ego, but perhaps I'm associating with the ego, but minus the thought, sensation, and emotions. The ego and those three are still. I think that might be it. I think that might be it because of how I see the things. Ego and Atma, perhaps for me, maybe not different, but I'm able to separate my thoughts, sensation, emotions from my ego. Maybe that's it. That's the reason why I'm not too sure about ego.
Beginning with pranayama. Notice the level of effort you have to exert at each stage. At first, to deal with the problems and challenges of day-to-day life, a lot of effort is needed. But by practicing yama and niyama, your dharmic lifestyle and increased emotional maturity will gradually make your life more free from conflicts, requiring less effort each day. Sitting in meditation doesn't require any effort at all, but you might need some effort to prepare your body for extended periods of meditation. Notice how pranayama and the following practices that lead to samadhi each require an increasing level of effort. To fully restrain your thoughts and diligently concentrate your attention can be achieved only with significant effort. So, for Patanjali, meditation is certainly not mere relaxation. It demands effort, sustained effort. In the next part of this series, we'll discuss the practice of the remaining angas: pratyahara, sense withdrawal; dharana, concentration; and dhyana, meditation, the final practice that directly leads to attaining the state of samadhi.
Okay, let's go back to that chart real quick. So I think I know probably some people are going to comment about how the problem is maybe I see myself as the ego. I don't necessarily see that as a problem. The only reason why is because if the ego and the Atma are the same, now mind you, hear me out here real quick. If the ego and the Atma are the same in my book, that means there is no ego, it's just the Atma. So when I say I don't mean the ego, I mean the Atma. So maybe that's the reason why, I don't know. I don't think I have the ego anymore, just merely because I understand the idea that my emotion, my sensation, and my thoughts are separate from me. So there may be no ego. I can't guarantee that. I don't know what kind of test I could take to say that, oh yeah, ego not there, you know? But, or maybe I'm so delusional into that I'm falling into the ego and just not knowing it. Very possible, but I don't think so. Because in order to have an ego, you must think that your thoughts are you, your sensations are you, and your emotions are you. At least one of those has to be you. I am feeling this way, instead of saying my body is feeling this way. But obviously, in simplistic terms, we can say I am feeling sad, even though just to have a conversation colloquially, like, you know, if you talk to someone who doesn't believe in this stuff or doesn't know anything about this stuff, you're saying my body feels sad. You're like, what? What do you mean your body? You are your body. So yeah, I do have a separation in terms of my emotion, sensation, and thoughts. And I think you have to have, perhaps, you have to have one of those three as something that you say, I am sad, I feel this, I think this, to have an ego, because you're associating yourself with the thoughts, as in those two are tied together, as opposed to separate. And in order to destroy the ego, you must understand that you are not your emotions, you are not your sensations, and you're not your thoughts. Let me know. Let me know your thoughts on that too. And let me know if you think I'm delusional, that I think I don't have an ego, but I do have one. Not the big-headed kind of ego, but but the ego, Jivatman, I believe. Oh, I'm testing out my vocabulary skill here. Jivatman, right? The false Atma. And let me know if I'm wrong about anything. Let me know. What else? So yeah, I think that's the reason why. I think maybe I don't have an ego, and maybe that's the reason why I'm kind of confused on that one. But again, it could be equally as true that I'm just so much into it that I don't know it's there. I am it, therefore I don't know that I'm not it. But I think, generally speaking, that the emotion, sensation, and thoughts has to be separate in order for the ego to be gone. So anyways, that's it for this one. Pretty big episode. Talk too much, yes. But hopefully it was all worth y'all's time. And again, if it's not, please, I don't want to waste your time, but hey, look, you watched. And also, if you want to watch Swami Tadatmananda's video on these things, I'm going to get into it slowly as his videos come up. So anyways, if you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.